finally be given the opportunity to know that you'll have your daughter's remains brought back to you. We are so grateful.
It's been 5.5 years since Brooke Wilberger disappeared from a Corvallis apartment complex. There was no sign of her until this weekend. Good evening, I'm Brandy Smith.
And I'm Rick Douglas. Investigators say they've recovered the remains of Brooke Wilberger. KEZI 9 News reporter Jeff Skripek is live in Corvallis with tonight's top story. Jeff?
Yeah, investigators say Joel Courtney pleaded guilty to the 2004 abduction and murder of Brooke Wilberger. Now, as a part of that plea deal, he had to help investigators and prosecutors find Wilberger's body. Now, what he did do was he gave them information that led to her remains. In exchange, Courtney won't face the death penalty. Instead, he'll be sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Now, the Benton County District Attorney says on May 24, 2004, Joel Courtney approached Brooke Wilberger, who was working on a lamppost repair. He was posing as a FedEx FedEx delivery man when he abducted Wilberger by knife point. He then drove out to a deep part of the woods in Coastal Range in Benton County, where he then kept her and bound her by duct tape. He then later came back, raped and bludgeoned her to death. Courtney told investigators he was surprised how hard she fought back. Wilberger's mother says she's just happy to have closure.
It might be hard for you to understand, but at this time we just really feel gratitude, even to Mr. Courtney, that he could see fit to tell us where he left Brooke. And
now, what we do know about the location,
what happens to him, we are thankful that justice was served and that he will not have the opportunity for parole. But now he can go on with what's left of his life.
I realize there have been some questions about the exact location of where the remains were recovered. And I would share with you that the recovery process is not yet complete. And for that reason, out of respect for the integrity of that process, and in order to completely recover the existing remains of Brooke Wilberger, we are attempting not to draw public attention to that area until the recovery is complete.
Now, what we do know about the location is that it was in Benton County, in Coastal Range, and that it was deep in the woods. Now, they're not giving us too much information about the location because they are still recovering the remains and they don't want to disrupt that process. Now, the next step in this case, Courtney is actually in process right now in transit to New Mexico. He will finish out his 18 years of the sentence he received there. After that, investigators say they'll reassess the situation about where he will go from there. Live in Corvallis, Jeff Skripek, KEZI 9 News.
Oregon's Attorney General is in Eugene for several reasons, but he spent the day tackling questions about the Wilberger case. John Kroger says he applauds the work done by the Benton County District Attorney's Office. Oregon's AG is pleased with the outcome, getting Joel Courtney to give up Wilberger's remains as part of the plea deal. He also believes the DA's office handled the case well, especially since the case came with a lot of public scrutiny.
I think it was very important not only to make sure that he serves a life sentence without any chance of release, but also to make sure that the remains of the victim were found. I think that was extraordinarily important.
Kroger said his office worked closely with the Benton County DA. The Department of Justice often provides assistance to various Oregon counties who deal with difficult cases, such as the Wilberger one. Now, coming up new tonight at KEZI 9 News at 6, we'll take a look at the history of the Wilberger case from the day she went missing to the events that unfolded in the past couple of months up to today. That's tonight at 6.
The news of the recovery of Brooke Wilberger's remains is making its way through the Corvallis community. KEZI 9 News reporter Heather Hinsey was in Corvallis today. She joins us live in our Eugene newsroom with more. Heather?
Rick, many people we talked to this afternoon are familiar with the Wilberger case and were absolutely stunned to hear the news. Some residents say they only know bits and pieces of the story from what they've heard on the news or read in the paper. We caught up with one woman whose mother was actually in the search party looking for Wilberger 5 years ago. She says hearing the news today brought up a lot of old memories.
I thought it had kind of been laid to rest, but now that it's actually brought up again, it's kind of like, even though her body was found, it's actually kind of disturbing in a way. But I'm really glad that she was found, but it just kind of brings it all up again, I guess.
All the residents we spoke with say they hope the Wilberger family can now have some peace of mind now that Brooke's remains have been found. And some of the people we talked to say they're glad Joel Courtney will spend the rest of his life behind bars. Others say while one killer is off the streets, this case serves as a reminder that something like this can happen anywhere. Live in the newsroom, Heather Hinsey, KEZI 9 News.
This is KEZI 9 News at 5 with Rick Douglas and Brandy Smith.
Well, it certainly was a very hot afternoon for some, including down towards the South Oregon coast, where temperatures topped in the low 90s out towards Coos Bend and North Bay. And here's what we're looking at across the rest of western Oregon. We've still got those red flag warnings out, and the crux of that heat is going to start to work its way inland. So expect things to really sizzle tomorrow for the first official day of fall. Right now, here's the temperatures outside. 90 degrees in Corvallis. It's 87 officially at the airport in Eugene, 90 down in Roseburg. Nice chilly start in the 40s area-wide this morning, so you can see the influence of that hot, dry air mass really starting to crank the temperatures up and out towards Coos Bay. They're now sitting at 86 degrees. Your weather headlines: fall is going to be roaring in pretty hot for tomorrow. Inland well into the 90s, could be flirting with triple digits in some spots. The good news is we expect things to cool down by midweek and into week's end. Any rain in the forecast for your weekend plans? We'll find out. I've got that 7-day, and it's coming up in just a couple minutes.
And now, 10 minutes of nonstop news continues.
The Federal Aviation Administration is investigating a deadly helicopter crash outside of Portland. The chopper went down yesterday afternoon in Forest Grove. The Washington County Sheriff's Office says a student pilot and a flight instructor were on board the R-22. Witnesses reported seeing the helicopter lose control before hitting the ground in a fiery explosion.
Just pretty loud, yeah. And he went straight down, and he hit the ground, and I hear the explosion, and all I see is the black smoke going up there. That was really quick, really fast.
The names of the two killed haven't been released yet. Initial reports say the helicopter was registered to Hillsborough Aviation. And over on the coast, a hang glider pilot is recovering after crashing into the Pacific Ocean on Friday. The Coast Guard had to rescue the man, releasing this video, which clearly showed the danger the glider pilot faced. It happened off Cape Lookout near Tillamook. A rescue diver had to be lowered into the water to reach the man.
More than 500 acres have been burned by wildfires southeast of Oak Ridge. Dry conditions paired with rising temperatures mean these fires could grow quickly. At this point, 518 acres have burned about 24 miles southeast of Oak Ridge. And right now, the so-called tumblebug complex fires are only about 10% contained. Temperatures are rising, humidity is dropping, and conditions are already very dry. The nearly 600 fire personnel are having a tough time out there, partly because the remote area where the fire is burning.
Well, the terrain is very steep, and a lot of places it's not safe to send firefighters to work direct against the fire.
Managers say more than a dozen fires were sparked in this area back on September 12th, all believed to have been caused by lightning strikes. We'll have much more on the tumblebug complex fires coming up at 6. Evacuations are underway on the outskirts of Ashland. That's where a fast-moving brush fire has burned one home and put dozens of others at risk. The Ashland Fire Department says it responded to a structure and grass fire late Monday morning just southeast of city limits. Officials started ordering evacuations around noon today, including a school. Fire managers say the fire near Ashland has stabilized at between 80 and 100 acres, but a second fire is now threatening homes near Medford.
A red flag warning remains in effect in the Tiller area as the Bose fire grows to 1,900 acres, but fire managers say the hot conditions actually help burnout operations, which work to control the fire's spread.
We're pleased that it's warming up so we can complete the burnout and bring this thing to a close before, we don't want it to burn for 30 days. That's the other option, is just let it burn for 30 days and let it fill on its own. But when you do that, it can dictate a lot of its activity to you, and we don't want that.
The Bose fire is the largest of about 50 fires on the Umpqua National Forest sparked by lightning storms last week. It's also the only active fire, as all the others are under control in patrol status.
Now, your first full forecast with Chief Meteorologist Justin Stapleton.
Well, as Brandy just mentioned, humidity is dropping and temperatures are increasing, an indication that we've got a very strong ridge of high pressure. And again, generally, if you don't know, high pressure means that the air compresses down to the surface, actually pushing down on the air, and that actually heats things up as it gets closer to the surface. And that's why we see temperatures in the valley generally running a little warmer. Also, what we see is pretty much this, a very quiet sweep across the Storm Tracker 9 live radar sweep. And that is not good news for those out there dealing with those fire dangers. We'll continue to update that on our website at KZI.com on the weather page if you want to check on the fire cats. Otherwise, 84 degrees in Florence, 90 up into Corvallis, flirting with 90 here in Eugene. We're at 88 right now, 93 degrees for us in Cottage Grove, 85 in Oak Ridge, 77s out towards Detroit, and then out towards Bend and Redmond, where they started temperatures in the 30s this morning. The real winner so far today has been out towards Coos Bay and North Bend. They sat in the low 90s as the crux of that heat really centering around the southwestern part of the state. Now, it's going to be shifting inland tomorrow, so all of these low 90s are going to be more like mid and upper 90s as the center of that, what we call a thermal trough, or that heat low basically, will be sliding across the state. In fact, here's where we saw it bottled up around Medford today. They topped out around 97, and as we said, Roseburg now at 90 degrees. Very comfortable afternoon east of the Cascades. They will start to feel the effects of the heat if you're going to head out there in about 2 to 3 days. Now, as far as this evening's concerned, even though we've got sunset continuing to head south of 7 o'clock, we also have clear skies, so that should allow the temperatures to cool off nicely into the upper 60s by 9 o'clock and mid 50s by about midnight tonight. But as I said, with that ridge in place, expect the heat to continue tomorrow. Hottest part was down around the southwest part today. That's going to be shifting inland over the coast range tomorrow, so everybody's going to get very, very toasty for that first day of fall. In fact, any kind of cloud cover relief from the ocean with high pressure centered overhead, those clockwise winds around there are going to be pushing those winds offshore, and that hot, dry air heading down the Cascade ranges really heats up quickly. So here's what we've got. Larger snapshot. That hot air moving in from the south. Big area of high pressure to our south that will anchor that. Now, computers are trying to slide this area of low pressure to our north by about Wednesday. If it gets close enough to the coast, it may bring some of that marine layer in for Thursday, which will cool us off just a bit before we warm up again for the weekend. So we'll have to watch that trend, but right now we'll go with it. But wait till you see the 7-day. We've got a scorcher coming for the first official day of fall tomorrow. Fall starting very warm, around 75 degrees in Coos Bay, North Bend. We'll continue to keep things very warm in through the south coast, 70s, and then eventually cooling off to more seasonable conditions and staying dry and sunny for the weekend as well. Hot and sunny tomorrow, 98 degrees in Roseburg. We also expect the Umpqua Basin to be very hot over the next couple of days, and then finally cooling off before we'll see just an uptick going into the weekend back to the low 90s. 94 degrees in Corvallis and Albany, around 93 degrees here in Eugene and Springfield, and we expect the temperatures throughout the rest of the Willamette Valley tomorrow to really spike out, and then that should be it. We'll cool off nicely by the time we get going into the end of the week.
If by sending young men and women into harm's way we are defeating al-Qaeda, then we will do what's required.
Well, it's a question that's getting a lot of attention from the American public. Should the U.S. send more troops overseas?
We'll take a closer look at a report on the war in Afghanistan and what the situation means for American troops.